Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Brittnee. Today I'm going to be showing you how to use a chocolate mold. I'm going to be making some small little individual sized soft caramels. I'll teach you how to make the shell of the chocolate, fill the chocolate, seal the chocolate, and unmold it. I will also show you a really easy way to make some delicious soft caramel for the filling. If you haven't subscribed yet, this is a friendly little reminder to do that if you'd like to see a new video every Thursday about chocolate making, cake decorating, or desserts. Before I get started, I'm going to show you the supplies I'll be using today, which I always link in the description box below. I've got chocolate. This is a compound chocolate. This is Van Leer dark chocolate snaps. I won't have to temper it, but I will just want to be sure to read the melting instructions, make sure I don't get it too hot or too cold for working. Then I'm going to be using a block of, not the whole block, but a block of Peter's caramel for the inside, as well as a little bit of heavy cream. And then I've got two chocolate mold types today, one that's made out of polycarbonate. These ones are a little bit more expensive, but you can also use one of these ones. They're flimsier, sometimes can be a little harder to work with, but they're made of plastic and the process is basically the same, but I'll be making some of each just to show you. And then you'll want some cotton balls or cotton pads to clean your molds before we put the chocolate in. A large plastic bowl to melt your chocolate in the microwave. Some sort of scraper that's big enough to scrape your chocolate molds with. I like this one. A disposable plastic piping bag. We'll use this to put the caramel into the chocolates. And just some parchment paper. Always good to have parchment paper on hand. So the first step to making these particular chocolates is to make the soft caramel, which I've already done, but I will show you how I did that. So first I chopped off of my caramel block 9 ounces of the caramel, and I just put that in a bowl and heated it in the microwave until it was soft. I did 30 seconds first, and then I think I only did 15 and it was ready to go. And then I took 1/4 cup of heavy cream and I heated it on the stove until it was simmering. And then all I did was add those two together and stir it until you get a nice liquid caramel. And then once your caramel is all liquid, you want to let it sit until it reaches room temperature. So I've already got mine and it's all cool. You have to let it cool so that it doesn't melt the chocolate shell when you put it in. So I have my caramel ready. And now the next step is to take a decent amount of your chocolate and melt it in the microwave for 20 to 30 seconds at a time until it's all melted. So I'm warming it in the microwave until most of it's smooth and there are still a few little clumps, and then I'm just going to stir it until all of it's melted. Your mold should already basically be cleaned with hot soap and water or just hot water and wiped down to dry. And then you just take some cotton and you're just going to do this in each of the compartments just to make sure the inside of the mold is nice and shiny. We'll make your chocolates shiny when they come out. All right, now I'm just taking parchment and I'm going to place it kind of under where I will be working because I make a mess. I always make a mess. So, and then it gives me a place to like set my spatula and things, you know, while I'm working. So I like to fill my molds like this. You can do it with a piping bag, but I don't bother. I'm just going to take a measuring cup and just pour it into each of the little chocolate slots. And then you want to tap your mold down so that you release any air bubbles and make sure it gets in all the little nooks and crannies in the mold, if your mold is like textured. And then, because I'm using a small bowl, I'm just going to tip this right over onto the tabletop, onto my parchment. And then when this chocolate cools, I can just remelt it and use it again. So when you're working with these bendy plastic molds, you can just kind of shake them up and down like this. And all your extra chocolate will fall. And depending on the temperature of your chocolate, you'll see how hard you need to shake it. If it's cooler, not as much will fall out, and you don't want the shell to be too thick. But if it's too warm, the chocolate will fall out really quickly because it's warmer, and then your chocolate shell could end up being thin, and you don't want it too thin either because then it can break. So then you'll grab your wiping tool and you'll just scrape it. You can scrape it into the bowl. This is where these plastic molds are kind of tricky because they're bendy. So they're kind of hard to scrape. And this one's a process because you have to scrape it a couple times and then tip it out just because it makes kind of a mess. So it usually takes me a few tries to get it fully clean. Okay, let's see. So then I try to keep it upright so that I'm not knocking too much chocolate back into the hole. And they look pretty good, pretty clean. One more little shake because I can tell there's a little bit of chocolate pooling on the bottom. Okay, there we go. I can see it's getting cleaner. So this last scrape, you want to scrape it really good. I'm going to use the back side of this. Just want to make sure the opening to each of the chocolates is clean. I mean, like the edges of each of these squares. And then I'm just going to set it aside to dry. Okay, now I'll show you the polycarbonate mold. And this makes a lot of chocolate, so I'm not going to do all of them, but I'm going to start the same way, and I'm just going to pour chocolate. I'll do the first 3 rolls. Rolls. I'll do the first 3 rows. I want to make sure they're all the way full. So I'm just filling them up like this. And then I need to tap it to get the air bubbles. So I'm going to go on the edge of my table and just knock it back and forth. Try not to drip chocolate everywhere, especially on the floor. But that should be good. So then I'm just going to, well, first I realized I didn't clean my scraper from the last time. You want to clean your scraper. So I'm just going to take an offset spatula and scrape off the extra chocolate from before. And now I'll just tip this one upside down like this. And this one's easier to empty because you can just hit it on the side like this and all the extra chocolate pours out. And you can check it to see how thick your edge is. I don't want them to be too thin. And then while it's upside down, I'm just going to scrape off the extra. Another reason why these are easier. The other ones are too flimsy to like hold upside down and try to scrape. And then right side up, I just kind of scrape off any other excess to make sure all the edges are nice and clean. And then I'm just going to set it kind of on its side like this to cool down before we fill it with caramel. While the chocolate cools, I'm going to fill up my disposable bag with the soft caramel. You can place the bag around a mug like this to help you. And then just get out any air that's in there. Twist the top like this, and then you'll just trim a small hole at the end. Not too big because you don't want the caramel to come out too fast. You can test it in your bowl to see if it's too hard or if it comes out too fast, and that's coming out too slow. So I'm gonna make it a little bigger. Still a little slow. That's better. Now my shells are all set up, so I'm just going to fill them with the caramel. And you don't want to fill these too high because it will be hard to seal them in, especially because this caramel's soft and it moves around. All right, now my chocolate had set up a little bit while I was filling the molds. So I've just warmed it up for about 30 seconds and I'm stirring it until it's all smooth again. And I'm going to set these aside for a second. You want to pull your chocolate parchment back over underneath your working area. I've cleaned my scraper so it's nice and fresh for this step. And I also cleaned out my cup so I can use that again without getting like little chunks and stuff. Okay, so this one is more difficult, once again, because it's the flimsy one. And so we're going to take some chocolate and cover up the caramels, but you're just going to try to be as clean as you can without getting too much extra. I'm just going to put them on top of the caramels like this. And then I'm going to knock this down a little bit to shake it into all the gaps, make sure all the caramel's covered. And then I'm going to just wipe. I'm going to try to do it in one swipe. It's hard because this bends, so it's easier if you kind of curve this one down like this. Seriously, these molds are kind of tricky, but they're not too bad. I also like to go from a corner towards me and back into the bowl. That just seems like an easier movement for me. And then just make sure all the edges of the chocolates are clean so that when you demold them, they don't have a lip. With this mold, it's like sometimes you have to just take the corner of your scraper and do it individually. It's because it moves all around. It's kind of worth making the investment in the polycarbonate molds because they don't move around. It's just kind of easier to do. And another thing with the caramels like these ones, because you have to work with them more, you run the risk of revealing some of the caramel, which I did on these two end ones. Probably because it's not laying flat. But this is exactly why I thought I'd show you this mold, because it's a little trickier. And then if you mess with it too much, they start setting up and then you're gonna knock more chocolate off. So I'm gonna leave it alone and I'm going to set it aside to set up just a little bit. And now we'll move on to the polycarbonate mold here. I have to wash all that chocolate off my arms. Okay, before I seal that one, I'm just going to clean my scraper like this. All right, and this is the same process, only easier because it's not bendy. Once again, I'm just going to take my chocolate, cover up the tops of these. Hopefully I can hold it to where you can see. It's a one-man show over here. Okay, I'm gonna knock it so that all the gaps get filled in. And then I'm going to try to scrape it all off in one swoop. That was pretty good. And then clean the sides. If you don't get it in the first swoop, it's okay. You can just try to clean it a little more. I need to clean this really quick because it's bringing extra chocolate in. Okay. We have two little caramels popping out. I don't want to add more chocolate on top, so I'm just going to do this. Because they're all pretty clean, so I don't want to ruin it. So you just want to make sure all the edges of the chocolates are clean so that when we unmold it, they'll come out nice and clean. Now I'm going to let them set up for about 10 minutes and then we'll put them in the fridge. So at this point, I'm all done with my chocolate. So I'm going to clean out my cup onto my parchment paper, as well as pour all my extra chocolate from my bowl onto my parchment paper, because I don't want it setting up inside the bowl, and spreading it out more evenly allows it to cool quicker and more evenly on the parchment, and then you can just break it up in pieces later and reuse it. Okay, so these have been in the fridge for 15 minutes and now it's the moment of truth, the time to take them out of the molds. I'm just going to get some parchment paper under here. And with this one, you want to flip it upside down and they should come out really easy. If they don't, you can kind of torque the mold back and forth. And these ones you can even give a little press with your thumb. Because it's flexible, that makes it nice and easy. Get them out like that. And then I'm just going to move them off to the side like this. And once they're all unmolded, they should be nice and shiny. And you can leave them as they are, or you can add some decorations. I'm going to add a little bit of gold leaf. I hope that you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up down below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, today's the day. If you'd like to see more tutorials all about chocolate, check out one of these videos. Thanks so much for watching today, and I will see you in 1 week. Bye!